How ridiculous. 29 years old and I've got a spot. So it's time for another mission inspiration video, and for this month I'm taking my inspiration from song lyrics. So first thing I'll do is I will show you the mission brief, and then I will show you the page that I've created, and then I'll join you back at the end. Welcome, Art Agent Specialists. Your mission for July, should you wish to accept it, is as follows. Step 1. Apply a base page colour with a baby wipe. Step 2. Glue tissue or napkin fragments to your page. Step 3. Add a thin layer of white gesso or paint. Step 4. Add texture paste or modelling paste through a stencil. Step 5. Add 2 contrasting colours. Step 6. Adhere book text fragments. Step 7. Stamp images or patterns. Step 8. Add a focal image or shape. Step 9. Add a handwritten song lyric quote. And finally, Step 10. Finish with a border of your choice. And this message will self-destruct in 3 seconds. Good luck. So this month I'm working in my circle journal, and this is step number 1, and we're applying a base page colour with a baby wipe. Now I'm using Mars Black and Titanium White acrylic paint from Reeves, and I'm going to mix them both together to create a grey, and then I'm going to apply the paint with the baby wipe to the entire of my circle page. And this is the very first base layer, so you are going to be putting lots of layers on top of this, so it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be the best paint job that you've ever done, because 90% of this is going to get covered up, and you are going to add other colours, you are going to add papers to this, so it doesn't really matter whether you make a pig's ear of this or not. It's just adding a grounding, a base layer, so don't get too hung up about making it perfect. So I'm happy with that base layer, so I'm just going to bring up my heat gun and give it a good blast to make sure it's all nice and dry, and try and even out that page now that it's started to buckle a little bit before we go on to step number 2. So for step number 2 I'm using the matte medium from Mod Podge, and we're going to be gluing down some tissue paper fragments. Now the step or the prompt is tissue paper or napkins, so it's your choice. Now I've chosen the plain black and white tissue, I think this is the Postal tissue from Tim Holtz and Ranger, because it's keeping in with my colour theme of grey and black and white. So I'm going to be using 2 colours later on, but for this I'm just going to be using the plain black and white tissue because I don't want to add any colour to the background. And that's the only reason I'm using this tissue tape. The tissue itself. If you're adding napkins or whatever, then obviously you can use whatever napkins or tissue with colours that you want to. This is just what I'm using. So that's enough fragments for me. I'm not going to be putting any more down now. So I'm going to grab my heat gun and I'm going to make sure that it's all nice and dry and that the matte medium is all dry before moving on to step number 3. So step number 3 is to add a thin layer of white gesso or paint. So I'm just going to mix this titanium white acrylic paint with a little bit of water. Then I'm just going to add a wash of the white paint over the top of everything. Now the only reason I'm doing this is because if I used a quite heavy pattern in the background on tissue or napkin, this will help knock it back. So it will recede into the background and not be too overpowering for the rest of the page. This is why we're using this at this stage. And of course, because I'm impatient, out comes the heat gun. So step number 4, we're going to be adding some modelling or texture paste through a stencil. I'm using the Winsor & Newton modelling paste, only because it's been in my stash for ages and I thought it was about time that I actually used some of this up rather than the heavy moulding carvable paste that I use, or the heavy carvable moulding paste that I normally use. So I wanted to use this up. There wasn't that much left in the actual tub, so it's a real good exercise in using up the last remnants of what you've got left. I'm going around the edges, just adding the moulding paste through the stencil because I know where I want to put my main focal image on this page. I know how big it is, I know this kind of space and size that I need to leave in the background for it. So step number 5 is we're going to add 2 contrasting colours. Now I've chosen pink and green because they are opposites on the colour wheel, so they are going to contrast. They're not necessarily complementary, as in they're not next to each other on the colour wheel, so they're going to make a real good statement on the page. So I'm putting the paint onto one of those blending foams from Tim Holtz, and I'm using the Dilutions Bubble Stencil, which is the same one that I used for the moulding paste. So the shapes and the patterns are going to match. And this rose red or pink is the first of my 2 contrasting colours. Obviously you can't put them both down at once because if they mix it's going to turn brown and that's not what we want. So I'm adding the pink first and then I'm going to dry that off with my heat gun, and then I will bring out another stencil and the green paint. So you don't have to use stencils at all. The prompt is to add 2 contrasting colours. I'm just deciding to put these through with stencils. You don't have to. You can add them with a brush if you want. So this is the second of my contrasting colours. This is the green, which is just a light green, and I'm using another one of the Dilution stencils. This one is called, let me think, Alphabet Border, and I'm going to use that kind of cross-hatching kind of, what would you call that? Kind of like a trellis effect one in the middle. So I'm just going to add a little bit of a different shape, a different pattern, just into the background using that green paint. And like I said before, you don't have to use stencils if you don't want to. As long as you add the contrasting colours to the page, you can use your fingers, you can use a mark making, you could use anything you want to add this colour to your page. Step number 6 is Adhere book text fragments, which is just a fancy way of saying glue them down. So I'm not going to put that many book text fragments on the page because it's already starting to get a bit busy and I don't want it to be that overpowering. So I'm only going to add maybe about 4 pieces of book text. I'm just going to have 3 around the outside and 1 kind of in the middle-ish because I know where my main focal point is going to go, and that will just poke out from behind the main focal image, which will give it a nice effect. Step number 7 is to stamp an image or pattern on your page. So I'm going to use this swallow stamp from the Stampin' Up set called Suitably Ornate, or Notably Ornate, sorry, must get the name right. And I'm using the watering can archival ink. Now this is a grey archival ink, and I'm stamping down onto watercolour paper that's got lots of texture on it already, so I'm not going to get an even impression, and that's fine because this is still going to be in the background of the page. I don't want it to be perfect, I want it to look grungy. That's the whole point. So I'm just stamping 4 of those around the page, leaving enough space for my focal point. And here we are. Step number 8 is to add your focal image or shape to your page. So for me, I'm going to be adding this magazine cutout that I've been hoarding for quite some time because I thought it was really nice, and I'm just waiting for the right opportune time to use it, and today is that day. So I've already added a coat of the matte medium onto the page, and I've added a coat onto the back of my collage image that I've taken from a magazine. And I'm just going to use my brush to smooth out any wrinkles and bubbles in the cutout as I'm adding the sealer coat over the top. But I'm not too bothered if I get a few wrinkles. It just adds to the overall effect. And if you're wondering why I chose the pink and the green as my contrasting colours, then those are the 2 colours that are in her crown that she's wearing. It's a crown made from twigs and roses and leaves. So those colours that I put into the background were taken from my main focal image, and as you can see, the chair is grey, which is why I wanted the background to be grey. Okay, before I move on to step number 9, I just want to have a little bit of a tidy up, clear some of that glue out of the way, the matte medium that's got on my work surface, and also just to clean up the edges of my art journal page, because I have got those book text fragments that are still sticking out over the side, and there's 1 or 2 pieces of the tissue as well still hanging over the side. So once I've dried and cleared my work surface, I'm just going to grab a pair of scissors and trim around the outside to make sure it's all nice and neat and tidy. Okay, so step number 9 is to add a handwritten song lyric quote. Now, as you can see, my page is quite busy and there's not a lot of space to actually add a quote or a phrase to that directly onto the page, which is handwritten. Now, I could handwrite it on a piece of paper and stick it over the top, but that's not the effect that I wanted to go for. So instead, I've taken a small angle brush and some white gesso, and I'm just going to paint a kind of hazy white border around my focal image. Now this is going to give me enough space to be able to add my handwritten quote directly to the page without having to print it. And of course, because I'm using wet paint, I have to make sure that it's 100% dry before I write on top, so therefore out comes the heat gun. So to finish off step number 9, I've taken my foodball pen and I'm going to handwrite my 2 lines from my chosen song that I've got for this page, and in this case I've chosen the 1981 hit from Journey called Don't Stop Believing. And if you don't know the song, I would love to be able to play a sample of the music on this video, but I would get so in trouble with the copyright people because I don't own any rights to it. But instead, if you want to listen to the song, then I'll put a link to a YouTube video of the band playing live in Houston, so you can have a listen if you don't know what the song is. And all I'm going to do now is just add who wrote the quote. I'm just going to write the word journey in that space between her leg and the chair leg and the year, so 1981. So the final step is to finish with a border of your choice. Now, because my page is quite busy, there's a lot going on that page, I didn't want to introduce anything like a scribble border all the way around, so instead I'm just bringing back that watering can grey archival ink and an ink blending tool, and I'm just going to add a real dark border in the dark grey all the way around. And as my finishing touch, all I have to do now is to sign and date it. And for that, I'm just using the Signo Uniball white rollerball pen just to add my name and the date. And that's it. July's mission accomplished. Well, I hope you enjoyed the mission brief and also the page that I created using the 10 prompts for July's mission. So don't forget, if you want to play along, then all you have to do is to join us on the Facebook group, and I'll put the link on the screen here and in the description area below the video. And that's all you have to do. Just pop along to the Facebook group, request to join, and you'll be added to the group and you can play along. And you can also find all the previous month's missions in there too, so you can have a little bit of a play and catch up if you want to. So that's all from me for this month for the mission inspiration. I'll be back again real soon with another art journal page. So don't forget, if you have enjoyed the video, please remember to give it a thumbs up, share with all your friends, and if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, you can do so by clicking this button here. That's all from me for now. I will see you all again real soon. Bye for now. That'll teach me to have a KFC.